It is possible to keep cool in a crisis, even in a real crisis. The fight that's happening in Washington right now does not need to be happening. It's a crisis created by a debate in Congress about whether or not it's wise to destroy the economy. But nearly 10 years ago, our nation was facing a real crisis, one created by the attacks of September 11th. And 3 days later, right in the middle of that very real, very emotional crisis, Congresswoman Barbara Lee gave this speech on the floor of the House.
September 11th changed the world. Our deep fears now haunt us. Yet I am convinced that military action will not prevent further acts of international terrorism against the United States. Let's just pause just for a minute and think through the implications of our actions today so that this does not spiral out of control. As a member of the clergy so eloquently said, as we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore.
Joining us now, a cool head in a real crisis, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Democrat of California. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Well, I'm very happy to be with you tonight during this very chaotic time.
I truly appreciate it. I took some time again today to listen to that moment, 3 or 4 days after September 11th, when you said, let us pause just for a moment and think through the implications of our actions today. And I'm thinking that's maybe what someone needs to call on us to do right now. So what do you think about this current crisis that we've created out of this debt ceiling debate?
Well, I think, first of all, this is drama on the Republican side like I have never seen before. But it's very tragic because we're on the brink of an economic collapse. People are relying on us to raise the debt ceiling. And quite frankly, Melissa, I think we should raise the debt ceiling, look at how we can move forward to create jobs. I mean, that's what people want. They're desperate for jobs. And look at how we can move forward to help reduce our deficit. But we have to be sure that we raise this debt ceiling. It's been done under Republican and Democratic administrations. We should just do it. Raise the debt ceiling, move forward, look at how we begin to invest in our people, in creating jobs. And yes, we have to look at how we bring this deficit under control, but we have to do that in a reasonable way. We have to have a balanced approach. We must look at raising revenues and also some cuts that are reasonable. I mean, when you look at the Pentagon, certainly these two wars, they need to end. There are billions of dollars there. We need to look at the Bush-era tax cuts, the millionaires, billionaires, oil companies, and the federal tax subsidies that they're getting. There are many ways to raise revenue. And so I think this debate and this theater and this drama has gotten out of control, and we need to bring it back to what's real. People need jobs. We need to invest in jobs. We need to raise this debt ceiling immediately so that we don't crash, and that's where we're headed. And then we need to look at how we begin to have a rational discussion about deficit reduction.
Now, Congresswoman Lee, I have respected that during your career on the Hill, you've been one of the most forthright voices for issues of working people, of some of the most vulnerable members of our society. As you see us hurtling towards this cliff on Tuesday, is there anything that you can imagine as a possibility for moving us forward in a way that doesn't end up harming those who, as you've just said, are most in need of our support as a country and you in particular as an elected representative?
Sure, we need to raise the debt ceiling. It should be a clean debt ceiling. Many of us have said that for many, many months now. Actually, I don't believe this should have been attached to or part of any deficit reduction consideration or calculation, but it is what it is. And so we have to move forward now and make sure that, one, we protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and two, that we protect all of those safety net programs for people who are the most vulnerable, who are the poor and who are low income. The maybe intended or unintended consequences of any of these cuts could be that more people fall into poverty. And you know, now, Melissa, I had to establish a couple of years ago an out-of-poverty caucus within our Democratic caucus. We have 39 members of that caucus now, and our focus is to look at these policies and initiatives and legislative efforts and their impacts on the poor. Poverty is rising in our country. Low-income people are suffering, they're desperate, and we have middle-income people now falling into the ranks of the poor. And so we have to make sure that whatever we do in the next few days will not hurt seniors, will not hurt our children, and will not hurt the most vulnerable. And that's what I am terribly, terribly concerned about. All Democrats are concerned about. I don't know how these Republican Tea Party members believe that their people in their districts aren't suffering. I don't know how they come to grips with the fact they have children and senior citizens and people who need jobs. This is horrible. And I think that we need to move forward, quickly raise this debt ceiling, and then get back to the drawing board and see how we can create some jobs, reduce the deficit, and move forward to create opportunities for all. The American dream is turning into a nightmare for millions. It's been a nightmare for millions, and we have to figure out how to find pathways out of poverty. So these efforts that we engage in the next few days have to protect the most vulnerable and must protect our senior citizens and the needy.
Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Democrat of California, thanks for helping us keep our eye on what is really important in the midst of all of this political theater. And thank you for joining us.
Glad to be with you.
Thanks. Freshman Illinois